With the first pick of the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select. Okay, we're not going to say nothing. Not yet. You may have seen something for the thumbnail. But anyway, what's cool and what's going on, Tennessee Titans fans? They have the number 1 overall pick. So we got to go ahead and take a look at this team once again, especially with some changes. Rand Carthon now, the GM, is out. So who are they going to hire? These are all going to be some very interesting things. They got a nice long list. A lot of the guys, too, on there, or girls, look very, very interesting, and I think they'll be able to find a very good GM. Let's talk about this roster. We'll go through a free agency strategy and a 7-round mock draft for the Tennessee Titans. Let's go, man. Tennessee, what do you do? There's so many big questions that they have to answer. Let's start, though, with the offensive line and the tackle position. J.C. Latham, really good left tackle. He had his moments here and there throughout the season, but for the most part, I thought J.C. Latham was fantastic, and I really see him as a franchise left tackle. So they finally hit that franchise left tackle position that they've been looking for quite a minute here. Now, they have to figure out that right tackle position because it has been a revolving door. It has been a serious problem. John Ojukwu actually was probably their best bet that I have seen all season. He actually wasn't bad when he was out there these past couple of weeks and whatnot. Nicholas Petit-Frere, I don't see him coming back after this season. I think they'll let him go. The new GM will decide to move on. You got Jalen Duncan. Might be more of a guard anyway, swing tackle. I don't see him being maybe a starter long haul. We'll see. Maybe he can continue to develop. In general, though, you got one position locked down with the left tackle. Now you need to find a right tackle. Just a competent right tackle. It doesn't have to be an elite right tackle. But if you can find a good one, you can be in a good spot here going forward. So that is going to be a huge priority for me, is finding a right tackle opposite of J.C. Latham. On to the interior of the offensive line, where they're going to have a couple of question marks, but mainly just one at the right guard position. I think they need a little bit more depth. That's going to definitely be something we have to address. But the right guard position will 100% be a draft free agency need. I don't see Dylan Radins coming back to this football team, mainly because he's been second fiddle all season long. They're just kind of okay, fine, we got nothing else. We're going to put him over here at right guard. At least that's the way it seems with this offensive staff, Bill Callahan, Brian Callahan. They're just very reluctant to play him in a lot of ways going back to training camp. So I don't know if he's going to be back. I don't know if he's going to want to be back in general. He's going to go to a place where he wants to be. And he's been an okay starter. He's not been a bad player or anything like that, too, which is kind of crazy. He just doesn't fit quite. I think they want bigger guys anyway. Lloyd Cushenberry, Peter Skoronski at least fills your center and left guard position, both really solid players. So you got some good interior guys. You just need one more to fill out the rest of this interior at that right guard position. Brunskill also, I don't know if he'll be back, so I expect them to try to find a little bit more depth, a veteran in here to help them out in that regard. And then tight end wise, Chiga Okonkwo, really good tight end. You got Josh Wiley, who's a solid player as well. So between those two guys, Nick Vanette is a free agent, but if they want him back, he can probably come back on the cheap once again. So overall, this tight end room's looking pretty dang solid. They could draft somebody if they wanted to, but I don't think that's a huge priority for this team, especially with some of the other needs on the roster. Wide receiver wise, you do have a couple of areas they're going to have to upgrade here, in at least contract wise as well. Tyler Boyd's a free agent. Nick Westbrook-Akine is a free agent. And that is going to be something we have to seriously look at. I don't know if Tyler Boyd will be back. I know him and Brian Callahan have a relationship and whatnot, so maybe he wants to come back and prove it and have a little bit better of a season next year. However, that's going to be something we'll have to get into the contract and all those things when we get into the free agency strategy. We'll talk more about that. But I don't know. I'm kind of teetering 50-50 on whether or not Boyd will be back. Nick Westbrook-Akine, though, I feel a lot more confident that they're going to want to bring him back. He was really good this season for the Titans and a really reliable number 2 weapon for their offense. So I would try to bring back Nick Westbrook-Akine, certainly a good football player. And then you got Calvin Ridley, finally got it together. When we were first talking about this Titans team, was where's Calvin Ridley? Where is he? He finally showed up at the second half of the season and looked more like what we've seen from Calvin Ridley, being that one type of receiver that they desperately needed. So you got yourself somebody in this wide receiving room. Now you need that, retain Nick Westbrook-Akine and then still need to draft somebody, especially because I think they're going to end up losing one of the receivers between Nick Westbrook-Akine and Tyler Boyd. So which one do we have to choose? If it were me, I would choose Nick Westbrook-Akine if I had to choose between the two. You got Jaquin Jackson of Toledo, wide receiver they drafted last year late, and I think he could be a nice slot addition for them after a full season in year number 2, but I will be looking to add at least a veteran or somebody to go along in the slot as like more of a shifty, dynamic slot weapon. Between the draft, free agency, certainly adding another piece no matter what. On the outside, too, is the depth there. I don't know if Treylon Burks will be around next season either. That's another big question. So they could use some more depth on the outside as well. On to the running back position, and you got two really good runners. You got Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Now, Spears has just been dealing with injuries a lot, but I think that between those two guys, you've got a really good 1-2 punch. Maybe they could add a little bit more of a power runner in here for goal line scenarios and whatnot, but they've been okay in that regard. Julius Chestnut is your third runner, gives you some special teams ability as well. I still think they could add maybe, like I said, a third, fourth guy into the room. It's not a high priority. It's like a late round throw, UDFA type pickup because Pollard's been excellent. Spears is a really good player other than those injuries, and that's why I'm saying maybe get a little bit more depth in here just in case. You can always add another running back, at least in my opinion. Overall, like they're in a good spot with Tony Pollard still under contract and been very, very good for them this season. Things get interesting here. We got to move up a little bit. We got quarterback talk in Will Levis, Mason Rudolph, Trevor Siemian. Rudolph, Will Levis, neither one was the answer this season. Now, for me personally, Will Levis, I am still one of those crazy cats that believes in Will Levis. Now, I don't think it's going to be for this football team. Clearly, him and Brian Callahan do not have a chemistry together, and that's okay. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. I would love the Rams to trade for Will Levis, let him develop behind Stafford for a few years. I think that'd be a really smart move for both sides. In general, though, we're going to have to be looking at a quarterback, whether that's the draft, whether it's free agency. I think it's both. You need to add a veteran in the room, plus you need to add somebody in the draft. Now, at that number 1 overall pick, which we will talk about real soon, do I feel great about taking Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, whoever else? No, not at all. So I still see this roster as not like a quarterback away. They have some areas that they have to address before they are playoff bound sort of team. So if you're not in that scenario, and yes, you got free agency money, you can fill some of those voids, but at the same time, like they still need some core players for the future. You do not have to be like go all in on a quarterback right now. You can be patient if that's the way the board is. And that's where I lean. So you know, everyone's going to have different opinions on this quarterback class and what should you do with the number 1 overall pick. For me personally, I would definitely err on go after a free agent and whatnot, and then don't force it in the draft. No matter what, though, I will be adding competition in this quarterback room. Like, you have to. Absolutely. You can't roll into next year with this quarterback room. It cannot happen. On to the defense and the defensive line, the big hog mollies. Man, they got some big hog mollies. This defensive interior was stout, man. It was really good all season long. T'Vondre Sweat as a rookie was unbelievable, man. That guy is crazy. A crazy athlete for his size. Like, he is a dancing bear out there. He is explosive for a guy his size and can get after the quarterback as well. But as a run defender, he's an immovable force. He was such a big presence for them, especially with the amount of trouble they had at the linebacker position this season. Like, they were stopping the run because of these guys up front. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons is a beast. Sebastian Joseph Day was really good too this season. James Lynch is a rotational player. Those 4 guys in particular out there, I mean, they were really, really good. So I think this interior, which the only question, of course, is Lynch and Sebastian Joseph Day are free agents. I would really recommend trying to bring back Sebastian Joseph Day. I don't see him being super expensive. But we shall see, okay? Like, they could find somebody. They could find a third guy on the cheap somewhere else if Day gets a bigger contract elsewhere or whatever. But I think if you can keep him, keep those 3 intact, that would be really good. I still think it's a draft need, mainly because there is, you know, a lot of question marks behind these guys. Who's going to be that 4th, 5th guy, especially if we do like go Lynch or whatever. So I will be looking at drafting somebody on day 3 as some more depth for this rotation going to the future. On to the edge room here, and this is an area they have to upgrade this offseason. Like, this is a priority. Both of these guys, too, are like 29, going on 30 years old, on contracts right now, and Harold Landry's getting expensive as well. Arden Key's fair. I think his price point with where he's playing to is he's a solid number 2, number 3 pass rusher in the NFL. So I don't want to discredit these guys. They're good players. They are lacking some serious firepower in this edge room. And the consistency, pass rushing wise, has been a bit of an issue too for them this season. Their pass rush off the outside has not always been very good. They've had some good games and whatnot, but overall, I think that has been an area that they need to really look at this offseason. So adding an edge rusher for the future is a top priority for me. I think it's a round 1, round 2 type need for this football team. And their depth, too, is very thin. You got Jalen Harrell, Ali Gay, Khalid Duke, Kyron Johnson. So it's not a ton of inspiring guys here. Maybe Harrell comes along. Ali Gay is an okay rotational guy. Same thing with Duke, I think. But overall, like, they need to add somebody in here early in this draft. We were just talking about earlier with this linebacking room being a little bit of a mess, and it was this season. Between trades, Ernest Jones trading him earlier in the season, Jerome Baker coming in, and just the injuries that they had. Unfortunately, Jack Gibbons had a really rough injury there with his ankle. He was really good, too. Like, I mean, if it weren't for that injury, I would feel a lot better about this linebacking room because at least you got Jack Gibbons, but maybe it might take him a little bit of time to get fully healthy. But looking at the future here, you do have Cedric Gray, and he was dealing with a neck, dealing with some injuries for himself this season. And that, I think, was the reason why they were really not playing him, especially at the end of the season, even when he was healthy. Just because, remember, when you're injured in the whole offseason, especially as a rookie, like, you need that offseason for sure. Especially, like I said, as a young player, it's hard if you don't have that offseason to be able to get with the team and all those things. Because linebacker, especially, is a tough position. You got to have the know-how and be able to have the reps to be starting at the NFL level. I still like Cedric Gray. I'm not ready to panic and push the code red with him. I still believe in him, and I think he's going to be a really nice heat-seeking missile for this football team. He needs a full off season, when he's healthy and whatnot. Now, James Williams stepped up and played pretty solid. I mean, I wouldn't say he was amazing, but I thought, he made some plays here and there when watching the games. He wasn't a dude that was, like, flashing on my radar, but at the same time, like, he's a guy that he's an athlete, right? And he's a big guy. He's got crazy length, crazy size. He could be a really nice developmental coverage style player for them, and certainly somebody to keep on the roster. Luke Gifford's a free agent, so you got a lot of guys you're going to have to work out. Jerome Baker's free agent. I don't expect them to re-sign him. I didn't see anything fantastic when I was watching the play with Jerome Baker this season. I saw him give up a couple of plays here and there too. So, I mean, he's not bad. He's certainly not a bad football player. He's got great athleticism, can run sideline to sideline. Kenneth Murray, I expect to be gone after this season. He's just very inconsistent. So overall, linebacker is a need. I think this is a free agency type of need, though. Bring somebody in. You have some youth with James Williams, with Cedric Gray, Jack Gibbons. Let's go add a veteran in the room. On to the cornerback room, and it's a good one on paper. Problem is, they had a lot of injuries this season. L'Jarius Sneed injured for a good chunk of the season, and frustrating it is because you just gave him a big contract. He's a good football player. I mean, I will say he was struggling and missed tackles and stuff early on in the season. However, like, he's still one of the better covermans in the NFL, and I expect him to get better, as he gets another season with Denard Wilson. And then you got Chidobe Awuzie, good football player, once again injured. So it's just kind of dealing with injuries in the secondary, which is really tough, unfortunately. But you got Roger McCreary, good slot corner, solid slot corner. I wouldn't say he's an elite slot corner, but a good player. You got Jarvis Brownlee, who was rotating too in and out with Chidobe Awuzie when he was coming back from injury. And Brownlee looked good. He had some really nice flashes this season. Darrell Baker as well. Nice, solid rotational player. So they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, they could use a little bit more depth in here. So maybe you draft somebody late. But overall, I don't see this as a huge need. Just got to get healthy. And I think that's the biggest thing for them. And then safety-wise, you got Amani Hooker, and he is a stud, right? I mean, he's a really good football player, but you need a guy opposite of him. Plus, Hooker's going in last year of his deal. I mean, they should work out an extension for him. That wouldn't be a problem, I wouldn't imagine. But I will be looking at drafting at least one safety here. I think that is definitely a need for this football team. Looking at free agency as well, because I think Quandre Diggs will go somewhere else. I think he'll want to go to a team that maybe is more of a win-now situation. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he wants to stay in Tennessee. Who knows? I mean, I think it's definitely a possibility, and he's a good football player, just injured, unfortunately, this season. Mike Brown, though, stepped up. Darryl Worley stepped up. So, between those two guys, if you want to keep one of those guys as some depth, I would definitely keep Mike Brown around in town. Overall, though, I'm going to sign somebody in free agency to fill in right away, and then I'm going to be looking at drafting somebody for the long haul. I think those are both areas that they're going to have to look at and make some maneuvers here. And let's start with the team cuts. We're going to go ahead and let go of Kenneth Murray and Nicholas Petit-Frere to save us almost $9 million. Murray, just feel like we can use that money elsewhere, get a little more reliability at the linebacker position. Nicholas Petit-Frere obviously, unfortunately, hasn't worked out. Maybe you can go to another team and work out. But for right now, I think we got to move on and get a little bit better at that right tackle position. So we've got $76 million to spend. But let's start with the team re-signs first and foremost, because we got to bring those guys back. I do want to mention, when you're going to see the PS budget, that basically is included with the miscellaneous practice squad and restricted free agent budget that I have listed there of $12 million. So all those guys are kind of encompassed in that, because those dudes are restricteds or exclusive restricteds. So more than likely, those guys are going to be back if they want them to be back. They can give them a contract on the cheap. And there's a couple of guys, too, on the roster that I include in this. Just save a little space and time and whatnot. But anyway, Going on to the re-signs here for the unrestricted free agents. You got this Julius Chestnut. He should be back on the cheap if they want him. Give you some special teams and some ability behind there. You got Nick Westbrook-Akine, 2 years, $16 million. It was kind of in line. I based his contract on like a Jawan Johnson type of deal. So $8 million, it's a little bit more than Jawan Johnson, but overall, I think the market typically goes up a little bit. So I think it was fair to give him a little bit more money, and it'll be a nice quality number 2, number 3 receiver for the team. Keep him around. Nick Van Nett, same thing. Give him some more depth at the tight end room. He can be a good third tight end for the team. He's a solid receiving target for them. And then on the Morgan Cox long snapper, he's a good long snapper. He is. Now he's getting a little bit older, so maybe he retires. You never know. But either which way, if he wants to come back, I'm cool with bringing him back. Defensively wise, Sebastian Joseph Day, I want to re-sign him. 2 years, $14 million, $7 million average, really solid rotational interior player. I think he's worth that money. I do. I think $7 million is not breaking the bank for a nice third interior defense lineman. Got to have that depth, and he does play a good amount for them. John Lynch, keep him around is fine. One year, $1.1 million. He'll at least compete for a roster spot. I imagine a lot, not of that would be guaranteed, or not tons of it, maybe like $300,000. And then we got Luke Gifford as some linebacker depth as well. $1.1 million back in town. Now, I did have to make some tough decisions here. Like Tyler Boyd maybe wants to go to a team. Like a lot of these guys might want to go to a team where they can compete a little bit now. Now, Dylan Radence was more of like, it seems like, they keep passing on him. So he might want to go to a team where he wants to actually be able to be wanted. You know what I'm saying? Daniel Brunskill, I don't know. Maybe go somewhere else if there's some depth. I don't know if I see them re-signing him. Nick Folk, I would re-sign him, but he's another guy who's 40 years old. I'm not going to bank on him coming back because he's another dude where at this point in his career, if he does want to come back into the NFL, let him go to a Super Bowl team. You know what I mean? Let him go somewhere where he can compete for a championship. He is so good. So I don't want to take any credit away from Nick Folk. He is unbelievable of a kicker. So let me be frank on my stance on Nick Folk. He is unbelievable. That is not why we were letting him go. It is just simply because the age and letting him go to a Super Bowl team is all but fair, in my opinion. And then we go on, we let go of Darryl Worley, Quandre Diggs, once again, similar vein there. Garrett Wallow, Jerome Baker. Just, I don't know if I feel good about giving him a contract. Let's talk about some free agent signings, though, here. Mac Jones. I know some people are going to really hate this, and I get it, but Mac Jones has been fine for the Jaguars, okay? And you can build a team around Mac Jones. It can be worse, okay? It's some competition in here. I just think it makes a lot of sense. It's in division. Maybe he says, okay, Jaguars, you don't want to re-sign me. You don't want to give me another deal. Well, okay, I'll go to Tennessee and we'll compete against you twice a year. So if he does go somewhere else, I think that would make a lot of sense. And with Brian Callahan, I think you'd be a good fit with Brian Callahan's offense as well. So Mac Jones, adding him on a 1 year, $5 million deal, up to $10 million, depending on how much he plays and what type of accolades he's able to earn for the team. I think that's all but fair for him. Now, I am going to bring back a Bill Callahan, somebody that when he was there for the Browns, that was his first year that Jedrick Wills Jr. was drafted from Alabama. And remember, he has right tackle experience. That's what he played at Alabama. So I'm going to bring him in on a 1 year prove-it deal on $5 million. He can move over to right tackle for them. And hey, I think that's a win-win for both sides. Jedrick Wills, look, he struggled at his time for Cleveland, but he's also not. He'll be more reliable, okay? I think at least it adds somebody in there at that right tackle position that I feel okay about, all right? And if he can just get okay at the position, that would be better than nothing. And Jedrick Wills, the injuries have been more of the bigger concern, I would say. But if he can get healthy, put him over at maybe his more native position going back at Alabama at right tackle, I think that would be a really good option for the team. I also bring in Matt Pryor on the offense line. They're starting right guard for the Chicago Bears. And I know you're saying, well, it doesn't matter if he's for the Bears. Oh, we're not signing this guy. But anyway, I have watched some film on him this season. I don't think he's terrible. He's big, he's strong. He's not the most athletic or laterally gifted guy, but he's certainly strong and at least give you some depth on that interior after losing Daniel Brunskill. And then we bring in Greg Dortch, solid wide receiver, $4 million, 1 year prove-it deal from the Arizona Cardinals, coming into that slot room, giving you a little more depth there with Quentin Jackson. And then on the defense side of the ball, bringing in Robert Spillane, 2 years, $16 million, $8 million average. He's a really good football player, all right? I really do like Robert Spillane. I think he's an underrated player in the NFL, and the Raiders may end up moving on from him. They're another team that, may just move on, get a little younger at the position, possibly. So they have to pay Devon Diablo. So those are definitely both on the cards for them. I think they only bring back one of those dudes. So if we can get Robert Spillane, I think that'd be a really, really nice addition. Adding that veteran in the room, a really good football player. to go along with that youth and Cedric Gray, James Williams, etc. And then you got Derek Forrest here, 1 year, $2 million prove-it scenario. He's been a little dealing with some injuries over the year, whatnot, with his shoulder. He should be back full healthy and everything like that. So you're getting a chance on a guy that can definitely start for this team at that safety position opposite of Amari Hooker. And that allows us to be able to draft somebody, not have to force an early draft pick either at the safety position. We brought back Mike Brown, so keeping some depth there in the safety room. And then we include $12 to $14 million. I budgeted in $13 million for this exercise, mainly because that number 1 overall pick, I believe, it's gonna be around $7 million against their cap year one, plus their other draft picks that they have are going to get to that $12 million, $13 million, $14 million range, I suspect. Okay, my calculations are correct. It depends, right? I'm not a mathematician on all that, but I try to do my best. Overall, it leaves us a little bit of money to be able to play after the draft, just in case we need depth or whatever. It allows us to go BPA. Let's look at the roster once more and highlight the needs before we get into the draft. Offensively wise, offensive line, we're still going to need to look at this right side of the offensive line. Now, I do think with Jedrick Wills coming in, you at least have some good competition there. Now, right guard to me is the bigger area that we're going to have to focus on in the draft. I think this is going to be an area we're going to have to look at between day 2, early day 3 at the latest. So I will be looking at this somewhat early in the draft. I think finding a right guard, Matt Pryor can start early on, and I'm okay with that, but I'm going to be adding somebody there. Wide receiver, will certainly look at add some depth later in the draft. I think they're going to have to add at least, somebody else because their depth is thin. And like I talked about, I don't know if Treylon Burks will be back either for this team and whatnot. So, and then quarterback, of course. Quarterback ideally would be a first-round need. I get it. But at the same time, in this class, as I talked about earlier, I don't feel confident in that. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But for right now, I think I will be, no matter what, I'll draft somebody. I think day 2, day 3, there are some guys in that bucket tier that you can find that might be better than the first round guys. I'll just be real. I kind of like day 2 better, or day 3 even options than I do in round 1. That's where it is. I'll find some running back depth too late in the draft, but that's not a huge need. Tight end looks like it's in a pretty good spot overall. On the defense side of the ball, edge rusher. That's the top need for me on this defense side of the football. And then maybe a safety for the future. I'll be looking at that. At least add a little bit more competition there. Linebacker-wise, you could, but I think they got some guys. They have youth. We brought in Robert Spillane. Hopefully Jack Gibbons gets healthy. You got Luke Gifford as well with some experience. So I'm not super concerned about the linebacker position. It may not be a huge strength for this football team going into next year, but that's okay. Interior defensive line, just a little bit of depth late in the draft. Cornerback-wise, maybe same thing. If we have a pick available, I think that would make sense to find a little bit of depth there, possibly. Here comes the crazy G-Sling, no quarterback, what? No Travis Hunter, what? I know, as high as I am on Travis Hunter, too, that's a little bit of a shock. To be real, and I always, look, I stay what I feel. I'm not gonna try to, put out something I don't believe in. This is what I believe in, and everybody's gonna have different opinions, and I totally respect that. If you think they should go Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, 100%, no problem about that. I just can't do it. I really can't. I don't think those guys are, they're talented, and could they work out? Absolutely. I just wouldn't take them at number 1 overall. And I would certainly look at trade downs first and foremost for this team as well. If you can get the Giants to come up and give them a haul, or even just anything, I would be okay if they gave us a second or a third round pick. I'd be totally fine with that because I still think you could get Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at that 3rd overall pick, or at least get one of them, right? So I like that option a ton. I don't want to project that. I just think it's a little unfair to project a trade with one team and then not project a trade with another team. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But they really, no doubt, whoever the GM is, I'm getting the phones. I'm getting on those phones and I'm hitting up the Giants. I'm hitting up whoever I can saying, hey, come on up. We're open for business. I don't feel comfortable drafting a quarterback at number 1. I don't feel comfortable drafting a quarterback in the top 10, much less than, number 1 overall. So that is just where I'm at. I'll give you my honest opinion. And I like Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter for them. Now, I went Abdul Carter. Both are fantastic players. But when you're in a little bit of a rebuild too, you need to build up those trenches. And I feel like their cornerback position is in a good spot now. They could add another weapon at receiver. So that's what I would like Travis Hunter to be for them if they did draft Travis Hunter. And I think that'd be a fantastic pick too. I kind of went back and forth between those. That was the hardest decision for me, was going between whether it was Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But Carter is a fantastic player, man. And you put him on off the edge, especially with their expiring contracts with Harold Landry and Arden Key going into the next season, 2026. I think it makes all but sense to go get Abdul Carter, go get a fantastic edge rushing presence here with those interior guys. That's no joke, man. Unbelievable. To have Abdul Carter would be so cool on that defensive line with Devondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons. We kept Sebastian Joseph Day. You get that true dominant edge rusher And with his athleticism and just continuing nuance and as a pass rusher as he gets better, I mean, only his first full season at Penn State as a true pass rusher, I think the days for Abdul Carter are just going to get brighter and brighter. So I'm going Abdul Carter. Build those trenches up, baby. Let's go. On to round number 2. We're also going to build up the offensive trenches now. Jonah Savaiinaea, offensive tackle, Arizona. He is going to move inside, though, more than likely, depending on the team where look, I'm not saying he can't compete at right tackle for this team. Absolutely. Like, I'll let him compete with Jedrick Wills. Best man wins. That's how it works. And maybe long haul, he could be the right tackle for this team. I mean, the lateral footwork isn't, maybe the most ideal for the tackle position, but he is so strong and he is very difficult to run through. I mean, he's got one of the more stout anchors in this draft class. He can move guys in the run game as well, so he's going to help out Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears in the run game. Really like this addition at that right guard position for this team. You obviously have Matt Pryor, who could start right away, and let Savaiinaea come and develop as a rookie and all those sort of things. But I think Savaiinaea will be a really, really nice addition for this football offensive line. On to round number 4, we're going Michael Taft, Texas Hook'em Horn safety. He's been a shocking surprise. They had an injury, number 2 from Texas. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he's a really good safety. Watch out for him next year. They lost him. Guys that stepped up, though, were Michael Taft. I talk about Andrew Makuba a ton, but Taft has been really, really good. Very good tackler. Been a playmaker, too. Bit of a surprise. I mean, he's got solid speed. I mean, he's not an elite athlete or anything like that, but he's a good playmaker back there and definitely been a reliable player for them in the secondary. So you're getting yourself another back-end target to develop. Obviously, Monty Hooker going to last year's deal. Plus, we only got Derek Forrest on one season. So get some safety depth here. Get somebody to develop. And I think Taft certainly has the ability to develop into a starter for them. Next round 4 pick. This is where we're taking that developmental quarterback. Dillon Gabriel, Oregon quarterback. He just lacks the size. If he was 6'2", 200 pounds, he would be probably viewed totally different in this draft class. He'd probably be a first-round pick. I'll be real. He'd probably be a first-round pick, especially, like I said, in this draft class. But at 5'10.5", which is a verified measurements going into the season, maybe he grew a little bit. Who knows? Maybe he'll come in at 5'11". Overall, that size concern would be a massive, massive outlier. And he is a good athlete. Like, he can definitely get out and create space for himself and run. He's had a couple of big runs, and especially behind Josh Connolly Jr. in that offensive line. I have to point that out. But Gabriel, good athlete. He's not Kyler Murray of an athlete or anything like that. So, yeah, there's some limitations. His arm talent isn't unbelievable, but he has good velocity on the ball. He can fit things inside windows. He's got good anticipation. I think he can read the field really well, can look off safeties and whatnot, knows how to go through his progressions. He isn't the best decision maker all the time. That's one thing I've noticed with Dillon Gabriel. I'm a Ducks fan. I think his decision, especially in the red zone, has been problematic. You go back to the Boise State game, or what was the other game early in the season? There was one. Which was the game? Purdue, I believe. There were a couple of games where he had a couple of big turnovers in the red zone that I watched. And I'm like, what are you doing, Dillon? But overall, like, Gabriel, really solid player and somebody that I feel really good about taking here on early day 3 and see if you can hit on a guy with Dillon Gabriel. You never know, right? I'm going to take a chance on whether it's Will Howard, Jackson Dart. Go grab somebody to develop in here. Our first 5th round pick, I'm going with the Farmer, Joshua Farmer. A little bit of a disappointing season. He could have been a day 2 guy. He's got good athleticism. He's just been a reliability in the run game. I mean, Daryl Jackson's been nice opposite to him, but they do need, he does need to get stronger at the point of attack. And he did get pushed around quite a bit in the run game. But as a pass rusher, as an early rotational guy behind, your studs that you have, he would be really, really good, I think. As a 4th, 5th defensive interior guy, I think it makes all but sense with his profile and the ability to get after the passer. Just to play 100, 200 snaps in his rookie career would be really, really good. Our next 5th round pick from KC, Caden Prather. He is an underrated prospect. I like him a lot. Watching Ty Felton, who's a good player too, in the slot, he's kind of had the bigger season, of course, and being talked about more in terms of higher in the draft. But Prather's a good player. He's got good size, almost 6. I mean, he's 6'3" in 1/4, I believe, is what his official measurements are. Close to 6'4", maybe even possibly. Might have grown a little bit. Who knows? But 211 pounds. He's got good size. He's actually got some speed too. He's got some burst, man. A little surprising. Like, he can stack corners. So I like him on the outside as a vertical presence. And if he can continue to work on his route running a little bit more, man, I thought he got open too on a pretty consistent basis watching Maryland games. So Prather, going to add some more depth in this wide receiving room. Take a shot here. Why not? On to round number 6. I'm going Taj Brooks, running back from Texas Tech. He is a Red Raider, man, but he's going to add a little more of that brute force in the running back room to go along with Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, just getting more of a power element. he doesn't have the speed that those guys have. All right, he's not the most explosive guy, but he just finds ways to get like 5 yards a carry. It seems like every single time. Just doesn't have the breakaway speed, but in those rotation, maybe he can be like a Roshan Johnson type at the next level. So really, really good low center of gravity, though. I think he definitely plays with a lot. I mean, he's a different player than Roshan Johnson. That's not really a good comp. But in terms of like as a rotational power back, goal line type of player, I think Taj Brooks would be a really good prospect to develop here in the 6th round, especially in this running back class. I'm taking a shot at somebody because, whether it's Jordan James or, whoever. I love Jarquez Hunter a ton. I have Jarquez Hunter as like a day 2 guy. I think he's so good, just a good player, but probably going to go up on day 3 in this draft class. So there's a lot of guys at the running back position, just depending on what you want to get. I'll pick of the draft, Melvin Smith Jr., cornerback from Southern Arkansas. I've not watched any film on this guy. I can't find any out there. So pardon me, I can't give you a scouting report on him, but just going to get some depth and hopefully gets like a Shrine Bowl invite or something, right? That'd be great. That'd be cool to see because I really would like to see this guy. But anyway, it gives you a little bit of depth. Whether he's safety, corner, who knows? Like, I think, you're just trying to find some depth in the DB room. That's it for the draft. Let's go ahead and recap everything up. Let's talk about the GM search real quick because I've taken a look at their interview list thus far, and it's a good one. I mean, John Spytek, I like him from Tampa Bay. I think he could be a really good GM. Tampa Bay does it right, man. They've got a great organization. Indianapolis, they got Ed Dotz, right? I believe they're interviewing. There's a lot of guys from Buffalo, Miami, I believe. They're interviewing from Cleveland. Mike Borgonzani from KC is a really good candidate from what I hear. So there's some options. I like some of the interviews that they've got lined up so far. So between any one of those guys, I mean, I'm not 100% on GM candidates. I haven't done tons and tons of research on the GM stuff, but I think what they have listed out, they've got a lot of really, really promising candidates. So we'll see who they end up getting. They need to hopefully figure out this GM situation once and for all because they haven't been able to for a very, very long time. For a little bit, it seems like they've been going through GMs like hotcakes. Coaching staff wise, I mean, I think Callahan going to get another year, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm not like convinced on Callahan at this point, but let's see what you get for another year. You got Holtz as the OC and Wilson as the DC. And those two guys, fine, let's go ahead and see what we got for right now. I don't think they're going to make any huge changes in those regards, but that's kind of the way I'm looking at it here. Find the right GM. I think that's going to be a key element for them in this football team going forward. Roster-wise, what we did in the draft, and I really, we talk about the quarterback position, of course, as one of the biggest needs on this roster, if not the biggest need on this roster. So you say you take one number 1 overall. I didn't feel comfortable taking one at number 1 overall. So, hey, we're going a different route. I got Dylan Gabriel on day 3. You got Mac Jones on free agency. Will Levis still developing. Doesn't bring a whole ton of security, but at least you have some competition in here. And it allows you to set yourself up with some flexibility going into the 2026 class, which I think will be way better, at least looks better. And I could talk about it earlier. Grass is always greener on the other side, of course, right? You say, who knows? You got to be in it to win it. However, I just didn't feel comfortable, so I'm going to add in what I can here, adding in competition, and you figure it out. Maybe you can get some sort of surprise, right? Surprise! We had some running back depth with Taj Brooks as more of a power element. Add some receiver depth, Caden Prather, and then Greg Dortch as a slot in free agency. In the draft at offensive line, we got Jonas Salvanaia. He was going to be maybe right guard, or at least compete at the right tackle position for the long haul. But Jedrick Wills coming in with that experience with Bill Callahan, put him at right tackle, going back to the Alabama days. Hopefully that at least, stabilizes that right tackle position a little bit. Matt Breyer at right guard, also going to help them. And then also, you got John Ojukwu who can compete there as your swing tackle. I think he'd be a really good swing tackle. Keep him as your swing tackle. Like, that's what I would do for sure. And then on the defense side of the ball, we spent our first overall pick, which I talk about. Ideally, you trade down, maybe get the Giants on the phone. Joe Shane, he's desperate. I think that would make so much sense, man. It would. Because you could still probably get Abdul Carter at number 3, plus you get a haul of picks. That would be the win. That would be the dream scenario, in my opinion, for the Titans. But Abdul Carter, even at number 1 overall, if they have to stick and pick, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, that's who I'm going with. All right, I'm just going to be real. That's who I go with. Abdul Carter, though, especially with their edge position, Harold Landry, Arden Key, both going to be free agents in 2026. Abdul Carter is going to be that stud that they need to add more pass rush into the room because that was an inconsistency for them all season long. At cornerback, we just add a little bit of depth with Melvin Smith Jr. From Southern Arkansas. Linebacker, we mainly focused on free agency, but Robert Spillane going to bring some security to that room, right? Spillane's a very good football player, and in Jack Evans, hopefully he gets healthy and whatnot. I'm just, that injury was scary, but you do have guys around. We brought back Luke Gifford. You got Cedric Gray going to year number 2. We get a full offseason. Getting healthy will be huge. James Williams. So it's not terrible. You got Otis Reese, Chance Campbell coming back too. And then safety-wise, we do add into developmental safety with Michael Taft from Texas. Had a really good season, so he'll be a great developmental spot, whether Amani Hooker's not re-signed next season, 2026, which I think he would be, but that's something to consider. Derek Forrest in free agency. You got Mike Brown back as well. So those are kind of your 4 rotational guys in the safety room. So that's going to do it here for the 2025 Tennessee Titans mock draft. I'll definitely be doing another one, so we'll have to revisit this very, very shortly. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. I know I'm going to hear about the quarterback scenario with this one, but that's okay. Hey, hit me up. So have a really cool day, though.